All right, so Ford's Q3 earnings call, huh? Got the transcript right here, fresh from October 28th. And we've got some early market data from the next day's trading. I'm sure you've seen the headlines, but we're going deeper. We're figuring out what's actually going on. Is this big Ford Plus turnaround they're talking about, is it actually working? What's it mean for investors? What's it mean for anyone who's watching the car industry?
It is a bit of a head scratcher, to be honest. Ford's celebrating, right? 10 quarters in a row, their revenue's been growing. That's pretty remarkable, especially these days.
Yeah, no kidding. Especially with everything going on in the world economically.
Right. And their global strategy seems to be paying off, especially that restructuring they did a few years back.
I remember that. Their overseas operations were like a money pit.
Yeah, they were losing billions back in 2018, but now collectively profitable.
That's a huge turnaround. And what about China? Weren't they having a tough time there?
Yeah, there was a lot of talk about them struggling in that market. But surprisingly, China has become, a bright spot for them.
Seriously?
Yeah, they changed their approach, went with this asset-light model, less capital intensive, relying more on partners and exports.
So less direct investment, more collaboration.
Exactly. And it seems to be working. They're actually bringing in a good chunk of change, over $600 million in profit this year.
That's wild. Makes you wonder what else they've got up your sleeve.
Well, speaking of pleasant surprises, have you been following Ford Pro? They've been racking up some serial wins.
Ford Pro, they're commercial vehicles, right? With vans and trucks and all that.
That's the one. And they're doing something really clever. High margins, recurring revenue, the kind of stuff that investors dream about, all thanks to things like software subscriptions and those essential repair services.
So it's not just about the vehicles themselves anymore. It's about the whole ecosystem around them.
Precisely. It's like they took a page out of Apple's playbook, but instead of phones, it's trucks and vans.
Clever. But it can't all be sunshine and roses, right? There's got to be some friction somewhere.
Well, there is a bit of a puzzle here. Despite all this positive momentum, their overall profits aren't quite where they should be. And the main culprit, it's an old foe, warranty costs.
Ah, the dreaded warranty costs. They've been battling that for a while now, haven't they?
They have. And despite making some genuine progress on the quality front, when the vehicles first roll off the line, they're still getting hit with claims from older models.
So those older vehicles are coming back to haunt them.
Like ghosts in the machine.
Ouch. So how are they tackling this warranty cost problem? They're not just throwing it in the towel, are they?
Not at all. They're getting pretty tech-savvy about it, using over-the-air software updates to remotely fix issues, improve performance, all that.
Like updating your phone, but for your car.
Exactly. And get this, they've already updated a whopping 4 million vehicles this year.
4 million? That's a lot of updates.
It is. But it does raise the question, will it be enough? Will it really rein in those expenses and boost their bottom line?
Yeah, that's the big question. And speaking of big questions, what about this EV price war everyone's talking about? How's Ford handling that?
Well, it's definitely heating up. Ford's right in the middle of it. They were early to the EV game, which gave them a head start. But now they're facing a flood of new models, some with really aggressive pricing, maybe even unsustainable.
So a lot more competition, and not everyone's playing nice.
Right. The pressure's on, especially with those Chinese automakers going global.
So is Ford just slashing prices to keep up?
Not exactly. They're taking a more strategic approach. Instead of getting into a race to the bottom, they're doubling down on cutting costs.
Right.
They've already shaved $1 billion off their EV costs this year, streamlined battery production, and they're aiming for profitability within the first 12 months for their EVs.
That's ambitious.
It is, but they seem determined to pull it off.
Playing the long game, huh? Efficiency, sustainability, not just chasing quick wins.
Exactly. And speaking of playing it smart, what about their bet on those LFP batteries?
Yeah, I've been hearing about that. What's the deal with those?
Well, they're going all in on LFP. Not only that, they'll be the first to manufacture them in the U.S. Big advantage when it comes to those IRA tax credits.
So they're getting a financial boost from the government for this.
They are. And these LFP batteries, they're known for being affordable and they're pretty darn reliable.
So it's a win-win for them.
Potentially, but then there's the whole thing about them scaling back EV production.
Yeah, I saw those headlines. Seemed a bit odd given their EV ambitions.
Right. Well, they did reduce their production capacity, but they're saying it's strategic, aligning with actual market demand, not a sign of weakness.
So they're saying they're not building more EVs than people actually want.
That's their story. Whether that's the reality, well, time will tell. It's definitely a move that's got people talking.
Makes you wonder what they know that we don't. But hey, they're not just betting on EVs, right? What about those hybrids they've been pushing?
Oh, absolutely. Right now, Ford is the king of hybrid trucks.
No kidding.
Not even close. Their hybrid truck sales have doubled in the past 2 years. It gives them a unique edge in this market, while everyone's still figuring out this whole EV thing.
Smart move.
Yeah.
Catering to those who aren't ready to go fully electric just yet.
Exactly. It's like a bridge to the future. And speaking of the future, they've got a bunch of new models coming out. Maverick, Bronco, the all-new Expedition, and the Navigator.
So lots of shiny new toys to attract buyers.
And they're hoping that'll help drive sales, especially if the car market as a whole starts to slow down.
Makes sense. Hedging their bets, giving people options. But let's go back to those warranty costs for a minute. It's a real thorn in their side, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And they know it. Jim Farley, the CEO, he was talking about how they've made huge strides in their quality control. The vehicles are much better when they leave the factory, but those older models, they're still a problem.
So they're fixing the problem going forward, but they're still dealing with the fallout from the past.
That's the gist of it.
And they're using all this tech, these over-the-air updates, to try to mitigate the damage.
Exactly. Trying to stay ahead of the curve, be proactive. They're using these updates to fix things before they become big, expensive problems.
4 million vehicles updated already this year. That's a serious commitment to using technology to their advantage.
It is. But it's still a long game. It takes time for those improvements to really show up in their bottom line.
Patience is key.
It is. But it's interesting. Despite all these challenges, Ford seems remarkably confident about the future.
That's good, right? I mean, you'd want them to be optimistic.
Oh, absolutely. But it's more than just optimism. They seem to genuinely believe they've got the right strategy, the right products, the right team to win this race.
So they're acknowledging the hurdles, but they're not letting those hurdles define them.
Exactly. They're looking ahead, focusing on the long game, and that's a pretty powerful mindset to have in today's world. They're attacking it from a few different angles. Jim Farley talked about how much their 3 months in service quality has improved. It's jumped 31% in the last 3 years.
That's a pretty significant jump.
It is. And of course, we've already talked about how much they're using those over-the-air updates to fix things remotely. A staggering 4 million vehicles this year alone.
It's a huge undertaking. It's impressive. They're really embracing technology to try to solve this. It's not a quick fix, though, right?
You're right. It's not. It can take up to 18 months for these kinds of improvements to really show up in their bottom line and, reduce those warranty expenses.
It's a long game.
It is. And, speaking of long games, we can't ignore the elephant in the room. The EV price war. It's really heating up, and Ford's caught right in the middle of it.
The EV market is getting pretty crowded these days. Everyone's trying to grab a piece of the pie. How's Ford navigating all of that?
Well, getting into EVs early definitely gave them a head start, but now they're facing a ton of new models, some with really aggressive pricing strategies.
Some might even say unsustainable pricing strategies.
Yeah, maybe. The pressure's on, especially with Chinese automakers expanding globally. They're really shaking things up.
So what's Ford's game plan?
Well, instead of just slashing prices to compete, they're doubling down on cutting costs.
So they're trying to be more efficient, more lean.
Exactly. They've already managed to cut $1 billion out of their EV costs just this year. They've streamlined their battery production, and their goal is to make their EVs profitable within the first 12 months.
That's a pretty bold goal.
It is, but they seem determined to make it happen.
It sounds like they're thinking long term.
They are. They're focusing on efficiency and sustainability rather than chasing those quick wins. And speaking of smart moves, they're really betting big on LFP batteries.
Yeah, those LFP batteries. I've been hearing a lot about those lately. What's the big deal with them?
Well, for starters, they're going to be the first company to make them in the U.S.
So they'll be ahead of the curve on that.
Exactly. And that means they'll be able to take advantage of those big, juicy IRA tax credits.
So it's a financial win for them, too.
It is. Plus, LFP batteries, they're known for being affordable, and they perform really well.
Sounds like a smart play.
It does. But then there's the whole thing about them reducing their EV production capacity.
I was just going to bring that up. It seems like they're scaling back their EV ambitions.
There have been some headlines about that. They have reduced their capacity, but they're saying it's a strategic move.
Yeah.
They want to make sure they're not producing more EVs than the market actually demands.
Makes sense, I guess. You don't want to be stuck with a bunch of unsold cars.
Exactly. It's a balancing act. But it's definitely a decision that's got people talking.
For sure. But Ford isn't putting all their eggs in the EV basket, are they? They're still doing pretty well with their hybrid vehicles, right?
Absolutely. In fact, they're the top dog when it comes to hybrid trucks. They control something like 80% of the hybrid truck market.
Wow, that's impressive.
It is. And it shows they're smart about catering to a wider range of customers. Not everyone's ready to jump into a fully electric vehicle just yet.
It's a smart hedge. Hybrids are a good bridge between traditional gas-powered cars and fully electric vehicles.
Exactly. And Ford's really leaning into it. They've even got some cool features on their hybrids, like that Pro Power onboard system.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about that. What is it, like a built-in generator or something?
Yeah, basically. You can use your truck as a mobile power source.
That's pretty handy, especially for people who work outdoors or go camping a lot.
Exactly. It's all about adding value for their customers.
And speaking of adding value, they've got a whole bunch of new models coming out, too. The Maverick, the Bronco, the redesigned Expedition and Navigator.
They're not slowing down on the product front, that's for sure. And they're hoping all these new models will help boost sales, especially if the overall car market starts to soften.
So they're covering all their bases.
They are. But let's circle back to that warranty issue for a minute. It's still a big headache for them, isn't it?
It is, and it's something they're trying to address from multiple angles. They're emphasizing the improvements they've made in their initial quality. And of course, we've talked about their aggressive use of those over-the-air updates to fix problems remotely. They've already updated a whopping 4 million vehicles this year.
That's a massive undertaking.
It is, but it's not a quick fix. These things take time. It can take up to 18 months for these improvements to really make a difference in their bottom line and reduce those warranty costs.
Patience is key, huh?
It is, but they're not just sitting around waiting for things to get better. They're taking action. They're using technology to their advantage, and that's a good sign.
So would you say Ford's at a crossroads right now?
In a lot of ways, they are. They've got some great products, a diverse range of powertrains to appeal to different customers, and their Ford Pro business is doing incredibly well. But they've got to get those costs under control, especially those warranty costs. That's the key to unlocking their full potential. So it's all about execution now. They have the plan, they just have to make it happen.
Exactly. And we'll be watching closely to see how they do it.
So let's talk Wall Street. How do they react to all this?
Yeah.
Ford stock price, kind of a wild ride after the call, right?
Yeah, it was a bit of a roller coaster for sure. Right after the call on the 28th, shares dipped like almost 6% in after-hours trading.
6%, that's a pretty big drop.
It is. Investors weren't exactly thrilled, at least initially.
So what spooked them, you think?
Well, profits were a bit lower than what analysts were expecting, and that whole warranty cost situation, it's just hanging over them, you know. Investors hate uncertainty, especially when it comes to potential losses.
Makes sense. But didn't things turn around the next day?
They did. When the market opened, Ford's stock bounced back, closed the day up 2.7%.
Oh, wow. So from a drop to a gain?
Quite a swing. I think it shows that once investors had time to think it over, to really digest the information, they saw the bigger picture. Ford's long-term strategy, all those cost-cutting measures, the growth of Ford Pro, their approach to EVs and hybrids, all those things, they outweighed the short-term concerns.
So the market kind of freaked out at first, but then calmed down and saw the potential.
Basically, it happens all the time. The market's emotional, but eventually the fundamentals win out.
All right, so let's wrap this up. What does all this mean for our listeners, whether you're an investor trying to figure out what to do or just someone who's interested in the car industry? What are the key takeaways here?
Well, I think the biggest one is that Ford's at a turning point. They've got a lot going for them, but those cost challenges, especially those warranty costs, they've got to get those under control.
So it's like they have the potential, but can they actually deliver?
Exactly. And then there's the whole EV thing. It's playing out differently than a lot of people expected. This price war is getting intense.
Yeah, everyone's trying to undercut each other.
Right. But Ford's decided to prioritize profits over market share, and in the long run, that might be the smarter move.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Exactly. And let's not forget Ford Pro. They're really killing it.
They are. It's pretty amazing to see how they've transformed that part of their business.
Yeah, they've built this whole ecosystem around commercial vehicles. It's a model that other automakers could learn from.
For sure. So overall, what's your take on Ford's future?
I think they're in a good position. They've got a solid strategy, a strong product lineup, and they're making smart moves. But there's still a lot of uncertainty out there.
Yeah, the economy, the EV market, it's all a bit unpredictable right now.
Right. But if Ford can get those costs under control, execute on their EV strategy, and keep innovating, I think he'll be just fine.
All right, so one last thought before we go. Something for everyone to think about.
Hit me with it.
Ford's been really focused on giving customers choices. Gas, hybrid, electric, they're doing it all. But what if, and this is just a thought, what if that becomes a problem?
Interesting.
Could focusing on fewer technologies, streamlining their offerings, make them more efficient, more profitable in the long run?
That's a good question. It's something Ford and the whole industry will have to grapple with. How do you balance giving customers what they want with being as efficient as possible?
It's a tough balance to strike.
It is. Something to keep an eye on, for sure.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. It's been a fascinating deep dive into Ford's Q3 earnings. Thanks for joining us as we explored all the twists and turns, the challenges and opportunities.
Always a pleasure to break down these complex topics.
I hope you got something out of it. Remember, knowledge is power, especially in today's world.
Stay curious, stay informed, and we'll see you next time.